What is up, YouTube? My name is Eben. It is Thursday in certain time zones, and we are going to talk about building on a budget today. And we are going to be building around Sand Slash. Now, this Sand Slash in particular is an uncommon. He's from the most soon not to be the most recent set, but he's from the Breakthrough release anyway. He's got 90 HP, a 1 energy retreat. He can attack and deal 20 damage for 1 fighting energy, or for 3 colorless, he can deal 80 damage and ignore pretty much anything that's on the defending Pokemon. Meaning he can hit through Aegis Slash's special ability that would ordinarily protect him from special energies. He can hit through fighting resistance. He can hit through abilities like the effect of Jirachi's attack that can protect him the turn after he's removed somebody's special energy. He hits through everything, and that's kind of cool. But like I say, he's kind of forgettable in some ways, but we're actually going to capitalize on this guy and his ability to pretty much 2-hit KO any EX and to punch through all defenses. So we're running 4 copies of Sand Slash. The whole point of the deck, in fact, is just to get him up, but this is a budget deck. And you'd be surprised what we can do with no EXs and no big premium foils either. We got 4 Sandshrews to get that Sand Slash up, and we want to build him up as quickly as possible because we intend to get him off with 2 energies. We're running 3 Landorus. This is because his Shout of Power is a great way to power up Sand Slash. And, of course, he goes with all the fighting support just brilliantly. And his Sky Lariat can 2-hit KO EXs and potentially hit things with less HP that aren't EXs for one shot under the right circumstances. And like I say, with the right support, like let's say a strong energy in a fighting stadium, he can even take out, he can snipe a Shaman EX with Lysander and stuff like that. So he's definitely worth having around. He's a good lead Pokemon so that you can power up your bench. And the only other Pokemon we're going to be running 3 copies of Hawlucha. This guy's free retreat makes him an excellent pivot. And, of course, his 1 fighting energy attack that deals 60 damage to EXs is very useful for dealing heavy, fast damage to a lot of opponents. And that's all the Pokemon we're running. Remember, after all, we're doing a budget deck here, and you don't have to have Shaman EX. You don't even have to have Octillery in order to necessarily make a budget deck like this work. Those are getting a little pricier. So we're going to eschew those cards and run without them, because in a lot of ways, this deck doesn't really need them. We've got, of course, you can add the Shaman EX, but we're not going to today, so heck with that. We're running 4 Professor Sycamore, and we don't really mind ditching a lot of things out of our hand to kind of give us that early game consistency, so 4 is quite good. We're running 1 copy of Teammates. Obviously, you don't have to run the full art. I just have the full art, and I like it. And you know what? If you've got it, you run it too. You run that with pride, my friend. You can. Anyway, we got 1 Teammates because we've got plenty of things to capitalize off of. It's a great versus secret target in this deck. As our opponent doesn't have EXs to hit, they only have non-EXs to hit. So plenty of opportunities there. We're running 2 copies of Corina. She can do all kinds of great setup for us, so she's just perfect, and she's great for getting that Sand Slash out of your deck, plus, say, Focus Sash, which is part of what's going to allow Sand Slash to take out other EXs and give us a very good prize exchange. The 1 prize on Sand Slash for the 2 prizes on the EX, obviously. We've got 1 copy of Giovanni's Scheme. That 20-point boost can be much appreciated, and of course, it can also draw us up to 5 if we need it to. That's some flexibility we really like. We really appreciate it in this deck. We've got 1 copy of Lysander for all the obvious reasons. And finally, we do have 1 copy of Zerosic. This card's pretty useful in certain matchups. The ability to pull off those special energies from our opponent's Pokemon can be very powerful. And against certain opponents, this can be our Versus Seeker target of choice, as some decks run little to nothing beyond just 4 copies of double colorless energy or something like that. So firing off a Zerosic can be a way to seriously cripple our opponents or potentially even incapacitate them. So anyway, speaking of such things, we're running 4 copies of Versus Seeker to get back all of our supporters. We've got 3 copies of Battle Compressor, partially because we want to make sure we get those fighting energies into the discard pile for our Landorus pretty quickly. So that's why we're running the 3 of these. But of course, also lots of supporters we want to ditch as well. And we can get rid of stuff we no longer need, like extra Battle Compressors if we have to mid to late game. We've got 3 Ultra Balls. Despite the fact that we have 2 Corinas, we're definitely running these 3. Once again, consistency is going to be our friend in this deck. So it also ditches those fighting energies for us if we need to, or extra supporters that are more useful in our discard for later than in our hand. We're running 3 Focus Sash. This is extremely useful for your Sand Slash. This is pretty much the thing you want to slap on it right away. This allows you to fire off a Swift for 80, or potentially more if you've got the Fighting Stadium or something like that out, or like a Strong Energy is one of your energies. It allows us to get that one big hit that's halfway to knocking out an EX. They can't one-shot you. This comes off, and then your second shot with Swift is your KO. And even if you have no other boosts, let's say it's a Fighting Energy and a double colorless, and that's all on your Sandslash, so you deal 80. They hit you, your Focus Sash falls off, and then you can just go ahead and slap on one of your muscle bands. And that 80 plus that 20 right there, that's 180. And that takes care of pretty much any EX that's not named Wailord EX or a Mega. So that's pretty gosh darn amazing. Remember, they don't have any way to interfere with your damage off of Swift. And to be fair, this card is also quite useful on things like Hawlucha and Landorus as well to really maximize their utility. We do have 4 muscle bands because after all, our Focus Sashes, no matter who we attach them to, fall off afterwards. So this can be a great way to squeeze out some extra damage on them. And of course, all our mons like to deal heavy damage pretty aggressively, and this really helps that out. So there's no reason not to run the 4. Our deck really appreciates it. Every Pokemon in the deck wants it. So, speaking of dealing that heavy damage and moving aggressively, we're also running 3 copies of Fighting Stadium. We have 1 copy of Town Map, mostly because we really like to be able to access our prizes to find extra copies of Strong Energy and Focus Sash and whatnot. It can be very good for keeping the pressure on our opponent. A lot of decks appreciate being able to find it, but in this deck, that can be one way we can really take advantage of that sort of constant pressure and aggression and being able to take force knockouts, as it were. So you can really, really capitalize on it there. And because we do, after all, run Corina, not only could we get that town map, but we can also get a Professor's Letter just to make sure we've got energies of some kind. So if you're in an energy drought, you can always Corina or Versus Secret for Corina to go get this Professor's Letter to make sure you've got some energy so you can keep playing them. And our final Corina target, and indeed our last trainer, is going to be 1 copy of Escape Rope. Even though all our Pokemon are very low on retreat, Hawlucha is free, and Landorus and Sandslash and Sandshrew all have 1 energy retreats, it's still really nice to be able to get them, kind of get them out of dodge if you need to, like if they get hit by a status effect or something like that, they get paralyzed, they get put to sleep, something like that. And it can, of course, also evacuate their active Pokemon in a pinch as well. So it's a good utility that we're going to appreciate in here. And finally, in our energies, we've got 4 Strong Energy, because if you're running a fighting deck, it's really hard not to run Strong Energy. It just makes sense. And we've got 4 Double Colorless Energy. The only Pokemon in this deck who really wants it is Sandslash, but that's perfectly fine because we've got 4 Sandslashes, so that's 1 Double Colorless Energy for each of them. This allows us, because it's Swift Attack, which is the one we want, is 3 colorless to attack with. This basically lets us set it up in 2 turns. The turn we have the Sandshrew out, we put on some kind of Fighting Energy or Strong Energy, something that provides the Fighting Energy. And then on the next turn, we drop down that double colorless, evolve up to up to Sandslash from Sandshrew, and we're ready to go. This basically makes its attack cost 2 energy, so we want to maximize our chances of having it. This can also mean that Landorus just only has to pump up each Sandshrew with 1 energy, and then we can slap on a double colorless and be ready to go there too. Finally, we do run basic energies, obviously, and we're just running 5, and they're all fighting, of course. And that is the deck. It is a tremendous budget deck. It's a lot of fun. It's easy to build, especially for beginners. What you're missing is pretty easy to trade for. Remember, there are easy to get versions of all the cards in the deck, even though I was running some foiled up versions of them just because I happen to like the arts and whatnot. You can certainly run the normal versions of them, and they will be just as good. This whole deck is one of the cheapest ones you'll probably find out there, and it can steal some pretty impressive wins against much more expensive decks. So if you're just getting started and you want something a little more economical to play with, this is probably a good place to begin. Fighting decks are nice and aggressive and can do a lot of damage without putting a lot of money into it. So anyway, till next time, like, comment, subscribe, check me out on Twitter, link is below as always, and I will see you next time.